right? And I think partly the difference in the African experience versus the African American experience is why there's a divide between Africans and African Americans. They don't necessarily get along a lot, in my experience, because we don't really identify with that experience, that the sort of the racial experience that African Americans have had to deal with.
Yeah. Yep.
Even though we don't identify with it, it doesn't mean we don't experience it. We just don't know how to articulate it. We don't know
Right.
what it looks like.
Hey, what's up, fam? This is Sar Levy, host of Africans in Tech, where we're building bridges and shaping futures in tech. I got another dope episode for y'all today. Got my boy Shem on the call today. I met Shem on Instagram, like I met most of y'all. I pinged him randomly, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not really like into tech that hard, but I do use tech." I was like, "Well." Um, According to the Africans in Tech, I think hashtag is what he had. At one point in time, I was like, "Yeah, it looks like you're in tech, so let's talk through it." So Shem, if you don't mind, man, just kind of introduce yourself. Nothing, super about like what you do and whatnot. Just more about who you are, where you're from, and things like that. And then we'll get into more specifics later.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Oh, well, I'm Shem Opolot, born and raised in Uganda. I'm have a heavy background in health. I did biochem for a long time, and now I'm working in global health. But that's what I do. I'm not really sure how to answer that in this context, but
Yeah,
as the questions come, you'll get to know as much about me as as you want. But that's me. I'm fun. I love technology. I use it a lot. It makes my life easier, and
yeah,
so I like to make it accessible to as many people as possible.
nice, nice. I mean, yeah, we'll just start from there. So, you're from Uganda. Where are you based at right now?
I am in DC right now.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's cold. I'm looking out the window right now.
I
It's
mean, I'm looking at right through the window. It looks like some sun out there, so I don't know. It might be the soothing.
then this is a glare. It's not a real thing. It's very gray. It's very
Gotcha,
gray outside.
gotcha. Are you literally like in DC? Are you like in the DMV area ish, and then just
No, I'm in DC. I moved here in January to do my doctorate in public health.
Okay,
And I had to find a place to stay that was close to school. I didn't really understand the lay of the land very well when I'd arrived, so I didn't know this whole DMV thing. And oh, DC
yeah,
is near, it's close, but it's expensive as hell. And so everyone actually lives in Maryland and Virginia. I had no
exactly.
idea. Um, but I just got a house that has a bunch of other people in it. I guess that's normal
Yeah,
for
yeah,
most
it is.
people. Yeah. So I'm in a house with like three or four other dudes, and
Okay,
we're out here.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
So it
hear
makes
that.
it manageable.
I
Hmm.
got you, got you. Yeah, and that's literally why I asked because I mean, I used to live in DMV for like 13, 15 years, and one of my things about DMV, just like you said, a lot of folks say, "Yeah, I live in DC," but it's like you live in Maryland or you
DC,
live in
DC
Virginia, but never
yeah,
in
with
actual.
an asterisk. I live in
Exactly.
DC. Why did you leave? You didn't want to pay taxes?
That and then it's also expensive. It's super
True.
expensive, like you said. So, I started my tech career up there, but then relocated down to Georgia for like greener pastures, like literally greener and
Mm,
warmer pastures as well.
true.
So, um,
True.
but how do you like DC so far?
It's good. I think community is what makes places home.
Mhm.
Um, well, that obviously also depends. I think the place also matters sometimes, but I do like cities. I mean, DC is a
Yep.
bit of a smaller city than what the others have been exposed to. But I like the environment. But mostly, I've made some really good friends here,
Yeah.
which has made it now feel like a place I could live in for an extended period of time. Especially since I have no idea how long I'm going to be here for.
Gotcha.
But a lot of places to eat, a lot of things to do, um, depending on the seasons, a lot of stuff to do. A lot of Africans here, a
Yeah.
lot of Africans in the DMV. I had no
Yep.
idea. I
A
had no
lot.
idea.
Yeah.
Nowadays, sometimes when you're out of the when you're away from home, you
Mhm.
walk down the street and you just can't even imagine anyone knowing you. But now I go places, I'm like, there's a good chance I might know people here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is very different to me. But I like being around Africans, man. So
Yeah. Oh yeah,
In
no,
that
it's
regard, I'm enjoying it.
if you do, DC is definitely an area for you because it's a
Mm.
lot around. Are you so you're Ugandan? Are there is there like a big community of Ugandans in DC? Or have you connected with many?
Well, I mean, big. I don't know. I keep connecting with more. There's some people that I connected with when I moved here. Just some people that I knew, people that work at the World Bank
Okay,
and stuff like that. So there are at least two people that I knew were living here when I was on my way here. But the World Bank had annual meetings a couple of weeks ago, and the Uganda embassy sent out an email saying, "Hey, come through for dinner." Then I go there, and there's like a
yeah,
whole group of people
yeah,
that
yeah,
live here that I had no idea about,
yeah.
And so there's definitely people I'm meeting them slowly but surely.
Nice, nice, man. Okay.
Mm.
And what school do you go to? I know you said you're maybe
George
HB.
Washington, George
Okay,
Washington,
George
not
Washington.
Georgetown, George
Okay,
Washington.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Which, fun
Okay.
fact, is like the largest landlord in DC. Who knew?
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, okay.
I have thoughts on that, but that's not for this podcast.
Huh. Monopolies everywhere, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so let's I guess let's step back a bit. So when did you come to the US? Um,
The first time,
yeah,
or
first time, yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll talk how many times. When did you come to the US initially?
so the first time I came was in 2010. I came for
Okay.
college. I
Okay.
came for college. Yeah.
Okay. And what did you come
2010.
to school for?
Pre-med,
Okay.
pre-med. I was heavily on the medicine track at the time.
Okay.
I went to a tiny liberal arts college in the middle of Florida called Florida Southern College. It's in
Okay.
Lakeland, Florida. Most people have no idea where that is,
Nice, nice.
but it's about 20 minutes from Orlando,
Okay.
Tampa, very close to Disney. 20 minutes away from Disney.
Okay.
4 hours away from Miami. It was an interesting experience.
Okay.
But yeah,
And when was this again?
2010,
2010. How old were you
2010.
then?
Yeah, man. Let's see. 2010. I'm 34 now. I'm
Yeah.
turning 35 in December.
Yeah.
2010. You do the math.
Okay. Okay. All right. Um, so what's that like almost 26, I guess, ish?
No, no, it can't be
27?
26.
Oh no, 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 no,
2010.
because I'm thinking no, 14. Yeah, no, no. So we gotta
See,
add
see,
minus
I
four
didn't
more
want,
years.
I
So
didn't, I didn't want to do
22,
that
23?
mental math, so I let you do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, well, you see, I'm terrible at math.
Yeah, I
So
didn't want to deal with that math, so I was like, let me give you the information you need.
so you're early 20s at that time.
Yes, that's
When did
probably
you
2019, 20,
yeah,
maybe 21, thereabout.
yeah. So I guess in terms of like coming to the US, at 2021-ish, 22, what I guess what drove you to that? Is that something that you've always wanted to do and then you just got the opportunity, or is it just like
No, no, I definitely. I mean, a year before, 2 years before that, before
okay,
2010, I never thought that I'd come to America at
okay,
all. It wasn't in the plans. It wasn't uh, anything I'd even dreamed of. I think it was around the time that the school happened. Once I was done with my national exams, and
okay,
I think I. I think I played a bit too much with my national exams, didn't quite get the grades to get on government sponsorship, because that's how it works in Uganda. If you're going to medical school in Uganda, you have to get some grades to get into the medical school on government sponsorship.
okay, okay,
And I think I missed the cut by a little bit.
yeah,
And then so I began to explore other options. But
okay,
also my friend, one of my really good friends, was always planning on coming to America to study. And
gotcha,
so he introduced the idea to me. I told my mom, my friend's saying this stuff, maybe this is an opportunity we can consider.
yeah,
My parents have no money to deal with. They're like, dude, go do the research, go find the opportunities. If there's funding, then go. If there
yeah,
isn't, then well, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you'll see what to do. But I had started university in Uganda at the time,
okay, okay,
just anyway, because I was like, listen, we don't know if this is going to pan out.
okay,
But yeah, but then so after I sat the SATs and all that stuff, and everything happened, got funding, got a scholarship, and that's how I was able to make it. And so it all just kind of came together very quickly towards the end there, and I ended up leaving. And by telling my classmates, I don't think I'm coming back next week,
okay. So
and I just left.
so I guess with that. what was like the focus? I know you said pre-med, but like what was like the end goal, you know, after was it like
The
I
end,
want to be a general practitioner or
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
okay,
The end goal was to be a physician and practice in Uganda
okay.
and just be a regular doctor that sits at the office and asks you if you have a headache. That's what I wanted to do.
Gotcha. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're
yeah.
gonna talk about how that's changed, if any at all.
Oh, 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 yeah, yeah.
Okay. So what do your parents do?
My dad has his own business. He does clearing and forwarding.
Okay,
That's exportation, importation stuff. Helps
gotcha,
clients get their goods. Usually it's cars and large cargo and things like that from abroad
gotcha, gotcha,
and gets them delivered. So clearing is a process of clearing the taxes. Forwarding is a process of giving the goods to the client.
gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
and my mom's a teacher.
okay, okay. Cool, man. And then in terms of like steering you towards like medicine, was that like a thing that um your parents did, or was it always something you wanted to do?
Oh, come on, man. I'm an African. What do you think? There are only three options, right? Three. You can either be a
I don't
lawyer.
stereotype, bro. I try not to stereotype, but
Yeah, we say that Africa is not a country, but we can only say it among Africans. For
yeah,
the most part, our
right.
experience is quite homogenous.
Yeah,
So you can either be a lawyer
yeah,
or an engineer
yeah, a doctor.
or a doctor. That's it. That's it. And
Anything
so
else, I tell everybody you're a failure if you do anything.
yeah, so that was my mission,
Yeah,
and I had no choice but to accept it. But so yeah, so I had to, and obviously within that framework, that
yeah,
limited
yeah,
framework, you sort
yeah,
of pick what you gravitate to, right?
yeah, yeah.
I was better at the life sciences. Well, what are the life sciences? I guess physics is a life science too.
Okay,
But anyway, I was better at biology and chemistry than I was at physics and math. Uh,
gotcha, gotcha.
and so but I gravitated towards medicine.
Okay,
Also because I think of the times, I think this was, I mean, the conceptualization of this started very early. This was the 90s, and the AIDS epidemic was ravaging through communities in Africa and
yeah,
losing a lot of, it wiped out an entire generation pretty much, and a lot of people were orphaned because of HIV. And so, sort of being alive in that context and seeing people dying of preventable illnesses
yeah,
made me gravitate towards the capacity to help people live longer and live
yeah,
healthier.
yeah,
So that one it connected with me and it stuck.
yeah. No, I mean, kudos to you. I mean, we definitely need a lot more doctors who are actually interested. This is one of the things I love when I talk to you, interested in going back home and serving our people. I think we need a lot more doctors who are actually focused on that. A lot of folks are looking at it as an exit strategy, which I don't fault anyone for whatever reasons that they have, but I definitely love the fact that you're looking at it in terms of I would like to learn and hopefully give back in some capacity working with our people. So I love that, man. Um, okay, so in terms of like tech, like was there like some sort of technology when it came to like the process of like applying to um you know I guess to get a scholarship here, like what does that process look like
Yo, what did it look like at the time?
at the time, and then we're going to talk about now. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my God. Ay, ay, ay. I mean, it was a massive learning experience.
yeah,
I will say that. I mean, at the time, we didn't have internet like that.
yeah,
At least in Uganda, we didn't. And
mhm,
so I had to apply to fill out those applications, College Board, and I forget what some of these other platforms are called. Some of them you have to apply via College Board and then just check a box that says the university's name. Some of them you have to apply individually to the university. But I remember I had to go to the internet cafe and buy a coupon or a voucher to
mhm,
get like 20 minutes or 30 minutes to
yeah.
to use the internet to apply. So that's actually
Wow,
how I applied to college. I had to, and there was
wow,
a bar. There was
yeah,
a bar. There was a bar right behind. It's still a bar, except
mhm,
now it's a little bit more than a bar. I think it's like a lounge, and sometimes it feels like a nightclub as well because that's Uganda. But
gotcha.
it's right behind our home,
Mhm,
where we live in Uganda, with my parents' home.
okay,
And yeah, I had to just walk up there and buy a voucher for like it was probably about 1,500 shillings, which is equivalent of it's less than $1.
Ah, okay,
for
okay.
at least at the time, for an hour of internet, which was
Gotcha.
extremely slow. So that hour would come really quickly. You
Right.
remember, at least back in the day, the websites used to load like this.
Yep, yep. Well, back
Yeah.
in the it still loads like that in my country now,
Hey,
man.
hey man. Yeah. But yeah, so but yeah, that's what that was like. So I had to,
Yeah.
several visits to the internet cafe.
Mhm.
I didn't put a lot of thought into what universities I wanted to attend. I should have in hindsight. I just
Yeah.
didn't because I didn't know better. I just applied wherever my friend who was more knowledgeable about, who had put more thought into it, at least I thought in hindsight. But I applied wherever he applied.
Okay, okay.
And I got in where he got in, and I was like, let's go there. That's really,
Nice.
in hindsight, I probably would have applied to maybe a larger state school or something,
Gotcha.
because it would be cheaper. In at least, yeah, in hindsight, maybe the Division 1 sports atmosphere would have been cool to witness.
Yeah,
Sometimes I think about that in hindsight.
yeah.
But yeah, but that's how it was.
Okay, okay. And then in terms of now, how's that changed compared to like then?
I mean, I don't know, right? So, I mean, what I can say is the process of applying for my doctorate was different,
Okay.
because you have, I think there's a common portal. There's a common portal for you to fill out which is probably it's how it works for medical school. It's how it works for a lot of these, like, I don't know what you would call them, but these career professions, like if you're doing the LSAT, if you're doing the medical thing, if you're doing the, and so there's one portal to apply, and then you send the same stuff, and then you just check boxes for which schools you want the application to go to,
Ah, nice,
and
nice.
then and then you add references and things like that. So that was the same process for my doctorate. Even though doctorates are usually different, because doctorates, it kind of depends on what you want to do,
Okay.
and so you just sort of find a school and identify a professor that's remotely interested in what you want to do, and see if you can
Yeah.
establish a relationship, and then they figure out if it's worth it to invest in you,
Okay.
because doctorate degrees are usually free, right? Well,
Yeah.
funded in the sense that you come on because they want to invest in you so that you can either become a professor at the university, or churn out tons of publications for them.
Gotcha.
That's sort of how it works. They kind of turn you into a little lackey,
Okay.
but they make it sound glorious, but really it's, could be better. But yeah, but so that's how I applied for mine,
Okay.
through that portal, which was, it's a lot easier. Before, we had to print a lot of stuff. We had to
Yeah.
mail documents via DHL. I
Yeah.
remember having to mail my transcripts to the US via DHL, and
Oh
it
wow.
just, yeah, it was cumbersome back then. Didn't have to do that anymore. Everything can
Yeah.
be scanned. There's a system for getting references from the people you want to write your
Nice.
recommendations. You just kind
Nice.
of give
Nice.
them a heads up, and then enter their names and contact information in the system. Then the emails go to them. It's much cooler now.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think, you know, any system where you can centralize information and kind of, make the process flow a lot easier. I think that
Mm.
that should be the way to go. And there's a lot of different systems in Africa as a whole. I think that individual countries can definitely improve on. So that's the reason I asked that, because I think we often do a lot of things in silos, which to me doesn't make any sense, especially when they're
Yeah,
in a relational with like other things that have to, you have dependencies on other things that are needed. So to me, I think it doesn't make sense to have somebody do a process and have to repeat that same process again for something else. In this case, you're applying for school. Why not just do all of the same things that you're going to submit to all the different schools all in one? So
yeah,
I'm glad that did improve though.
yeah. No, I mean, it takes. I mean, I don't want to say it takes time, because I think it's about damn time.
Yeah,
At least
yeah,
in
yeah,
at least in a lot of the African context I'm familiar with. But sometimes your perception of a problem isn't as dire until you are personally affected by it. And in this case, the you I'm speaking about is probably decision makers.
yeah.
And so they don't see the value in harmonizing some of these systems yet.
Right.
Sometimes it's because they're out of touch, which is a lot of which is the case most of the times in Africa, because our leadership is very old
Yeah,
in comparison to the majority of the population.
yeah,
And so because of that, they don't prioritize this efficiency and this harmonization of tech and systems that can make things easier
yeah,
for a lot of people.
In terms, we don't get into politics per se, but in terms of like um government, have you seen like a lot more investment in terms of like the tech space and improving that in Uganda, or has it been kind of stagnant, you know, throughout the years?
What do you mean? What do you mean we don't get into politics? We everything is politics.
Everything's politics.
No, but I mean, I think yeah, obviously yes. Just in the sense, it's like how we have a president, who has been in power for so long and points to progress in terms of roads and things, infrastructure, basically. They
Infrastructure,
they
yeah, yep,
they, they point to infrastructure and say, "Do you know where we were in 1986? See what we have now, right?"
yeah,
And my argument to that is also that, I mean, on some level, progress is inevitable.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yep,
anyone who has been in power for 60 years will have something
yeah, yeah,
to show for it. I think, if anything, the environment is thriving in spite of you at this point. But that's a story for another day. But I will, yes, there is definitely a lot more investment in technology. We have a
yep,
lot of communication hubs, and we have innovation hubs all over the place, springing up everywhere. Again, happening in silos. A lot
yeah,
of it is happening in the private sector. The government's trying to get involved. We have some innovation hubs. Actually, when I used to do YouTube, when I used to make videos on YouTube, I
okay,
used to make my videos at this innovation hub that
yeah,
was built by the Uganda government. And I used to do
okay,
it for free. I just went there to MC an event one day and I was like, this place has they have a lot of space. What do you guys do here? And I met the lady. I was like, hey, I want to shoot my videos here. She was like, fine. And yeah, so I used to shoot videos in there. Nice place, lots of computers locked away in rooms that I don't know if anyone uses. But yeah, so there's definitely more investment.
yeah,
I think though, it's just one of those things that I think we struggle with, and this is my personal opinion, and I
yeah,
can only speak for Uganda in this context, is that we have this inability to pay attention to detail and to really think carefully about how to improve community.
okay,
And what that means is that the state and the citizen have to interact more intimately than they do. And so the state needs to be more in touch with what the citizen needs.
yeah,
And as they innovate and as they build things, they have to make sure that they're building things that are useful
yep, yeah,
for the citizenry. Otherwise, you just have big shiny buildings that no one's in because they don't see the value of that building because you haven't yet demonstrated why they should be in that building.
right, yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, what you said, I think is germane to like almost every country in the continent. Unfortunately, where there's a lot of, and it's not just germane to like I think Africa, but you look at any other country, there's like a lot of like questions around the actionable reasoning behind what you're doing. So, does this help do what? What does this solve? What does this answer? And I think, unfortunately, it's a lot more in terms of percentage in countries in Africa. I can speak specifically for Sierra Leone, where there's a lot of why the heck did you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay XYZ,
It
Leones
makes
for
it
this?
makes sense. It's just not
Yeah.
aligned with public interest. It
Yeah,
makes sense to
I guess
someone.
interest. Yeah, interest wise. Yeah, yeah. So yeah. Again, we're not going to get into politics. But yeah, no. So that's good to know. I mean, the fact that like you said, even if it's just natural trend of like things progressing because of you know society just getting better and getting more developed, or whether it's a an aspect of someone taking initiative. At the end of the day, things have progressed in Uganda. So I'm glad that's the case. My hope is like I think moving forward, not only with processes like um, you know what you had to deal with in terms of applying for schools and whatnot, but other processes that can be streamlined, especially from a digital standpoint. I think if we can improve on those things and talk about those things, that's my hope with podcasts like this is how have we improved 15, 10, 20 years down the line from what we were doing before. Have you seen any other improvements in terms of like things you used to do digitally, versus like now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, you can now register your business online.
Okay.
You can now, well, as much as is possible. There's a decent amount of the process that can be done digitally, and I guess we have to appreciate that. I know that you can get your driver's license a lot quicker now,
Okay.
probably in less than an hour, maybe even 30 minutes in Uganda right now, which is mostly because that process is
Nice.
digital.
Nice.
So there's definitely improvements in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that you can do online. If you go to some private hospitals now, you can access your medical records online.
Okay. Okay.
And we used to have these pink forms at the clinic when we were kids because we were getting malaria every 3 to 5 business days. And so we used to go to the clinic and we used to have these pink
That's
forms
scary.
that they'd put. It's reality. And I remember it was amazing to me because these nurses always knew where the forms were and they could find them so quickly. But when you'd walk in there, it looked like chaos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, how are
Yeah.
you going to find anyone's card
Yep.
in this thing? But you just be like, Opolot, sit there. She'd go behind there, come back with this pink like bundle of like, my medical history, just malaria, 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 malaria,
Jesus.
right? And it was just, all the changes is the different
Yeah.
medications that we've used over time. Yeah,
That's
but
crazy.
now you go back there now
Yeah.
and she has a computer and she's like up a lot. I'm like, geez, when did we
Yeah.
get here? That's amazing, you know?
Yeah.
So of course there's little incremental progress, which is again, I think also inevitable in a little
Yeah.
way, in a way, but also maybe intentional. So
Yeah.
we have to also give credit
Yeah.
where it's due.
From a record standpoint, I think it's called EMR. Do you guys have is there like a good record system in
You're actually asking me. That's my area of, I wouldn't call it expertise, but my area
Okay.
of interest.
Okay.
It's my area of interest is health information. That's actually what my dissertation is.
Okay.
Uh, but I mean, there's no national EMR
Okay.
in Uganda, at least. Not yet, not yet. A lot of the players in the private sector use similar EMRs
Okay.
uh, provided by private vendors. You hear names like Clinic Master, you hear Epic. There's all these like
Yeah.
vendors that distribute EMR systems and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But the government system, no, there's nothing national yet. We still use a lot of the DHIS to which everyone in Africa, almost everyone in Africa is familiar with. It's a technology built by a Norwegian company, which
Gotcha.
helps government capture specific health information that's relevant for programming at a whole on a
Gotcha.
national level. But it's very, very limited, but it's the best we can do for now. I
Yeah.
think it's in the works. I think the digitization of the health space is in the works. I've seen a lot of publications about it, a lot of strategic plans, even though that's the stuff we're really good at. We're very good at strategic plans
Not the
versus, yeah.
implementation. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the documents are there,
Yeah.
which at least shows you there's a thinking, there's thinking that's happening, there's
Yeah.
planning that's happening. Hopefully there'll be more executing that's happening. Of course,
Yeah.
digitization is an expensive venture,
Right.
but
So in terms of like I guess the actual like vendors in the space, are a lot of them white labels or a lot of them like homegrown programs or software that's actually built in Uganda?
built in Uganda, probably not. No,
Okay. Okay.
no. I don't know who owns Clinic Master. It gives the vibe like it's homegrown, but I don't think it is. I don't think
Gotcha.
it is.
Gotcha.
So what term did you use? White label? It's yeah, it sounds like that, but I can't say. I don't know. I don't know where it's from.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
but but yeah, no, most of them are foreign entities. Another thing that happens is a lot of private hospitals will come into the industry and then they'll sort of bring in their tech team from
Yeah.
wherever they're from. We have some hospitals that come from South Africa and they just like onboard their software that comes from wherever it comes from, South Africa, Israel, wherever.
Okay. Okay.
That's what tends to happen.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean,
And when
it's go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and when our government decides to implement an EMR, they probably will also get some international vendor to implement it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that on that level, I don't know what that would look like. Maybe some WHO partnership with the Norwegian DHIS2 guys will maybe come up with
Yeah.
some massive. EMR solution to be implemented Africa wide. Maybe that's what that will look like. If anyone will know, I will know in a few years because this is what I'm studying.
Yeah.
But right now it's still very siloed.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, that not just in Uganda, I think in a lot of African countries where that's a norm. I know there's definitely vested interest in why, but um, we often get services from international companies and
Mm.
international vendors, whereas you have a lot of talented individuals, um, within country that can do the work. But again, I know there's a lot of hands in the pots in different places for reasons that we won't
Mm.
talk too much about. But it's unfortunate. And the reason why I asked about the white labeling pieces because um, there are often a lot of like entrepreneurs and startups that do have like some of these solutions that they may not necessarily build at scale, but they build enough to where it can serve the capacity that it's needed for whatever your use case is. In this case, let's say you need a EMR system for the several hospitals that you have in country. I'm pretty sure there's solutions that um, I can't speak for certain, but there could be solutions from local startups that can pacify those needs. Whereas if you start talking like from a scale standpoint, you may not necessarily have that, but you can work with a company that can actually scale to that. But they're not giving a lot of those opportunities because of unsaid reasons.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you're right. I mean, I tried to get in that space. Listen, um, my friends and I wanted to build an EMR
mhm.
for some private entities,
Yeah,
clinics. We wanted to start with clinics, just smaller clinics, before moving up to hospitals and things like that. Before then, moving up to government. But again, things are not clear. Things are
yeah,
not clear in Uganda. People waste your time. People take meetings and tell you
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Come back on Monday. Come back on Tuesday. The boss is
yeah,
not here. He's in the village. Come back on Thursday. And they just sort of jerk you around. And I just remember it being a very exhausting process of writing proposals and Excel sheets with projections and
yeah,
all that for someone to just jerk you around and waste your time
yeah,
before just getting the market, whatever's on the market from whatever entity is from
right,
abroad. And I understand why sometimes. Sometimes it's again, like you said, sometimes it's self-interest, sometimes it's just like a backdoor deal,
right,
sometimes it's just the idea of quality control.
right.
Because you're not experienced in the space, it's a
Yep,
more of a risk,
yep,
even though that's why that kind of thing makes a lot more sense in certain contexts where you can maybe say, listen, we are homegrown, we're young, this is what our solution looks like, but we can grow together. You trust us, we can do this thing and build it
yep.
up, and then we can have partnerships with larger entities that can help us build
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
capacity that raises confidence. So you're right about that. But yeah, like you said, these decisions happen for various reasons. Of course, I'm sometimes cynical, so I'm inclined to think not very good reasons for the
right.
most part. But uh, uh, things are getting better. I think more homegrown startups are beginning to creep into some of these spaces.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's just at scale is where the challenge comes in.
Yeah, yeah.
They
And I
they
mean,
have a
it's,
lot more
it's
heavy lifting to do.
yeah. I mean, and it's hard to prove that you can scale when you don't have the opportunities, right? So,
Exactly,
you know,
exactly. It's that cyclical. I don't have a job, but I don't have experience. I need
yeah,
experience to get a job. Same
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. 10 years for entry level. I mean, that's
Hey,
that's
yo.
that's
Yeah.
what we're getting to right now.
It's funny because I came to DC, in January and I was looking for work. And this is actually the first time in my life that I've had to look for a job in this way.
Mhm.
But I tell you, I had never experienced the rejections because of too much work experience
It's
before.
crazy. It's crazy,
But
man.
that's a thing now too.
Yeah,
So that was interesting from that
yeah,
perspective.
yeah. No, I've heard the overqualified. I know. I we won't get too much into it, but I know that there's expenses when it comes to like turnovers and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's like there's a need. You have somebody that can fulfill that need, albeit 6 months, year, whatever it is. Are you willing to wait for some? underqualified persons rather than hire somebody that's qualified, or vice versa. Um, are you willing to not hire somebody that you can train to capacity and to learn what they need to learn to be diligent and good in that job, versus trying to hire somebody that's the perfect fit per se. So I have those
Mhm.
issues from a tech standpoint, and I'm pretty sure it's also, it affects other sectors, but it's just really bothersome the way that the hiring process is done nowadays anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, I think with the case of being overqualified, I think they'd be worried that, you're going to come in there and develop a big
take
head
jobs.
overnight.
Yeah.
No, but also you're like, oh, I was overqualified, but I needed the job, so I'm just going to come in and get put my head down and work. And then 3 weeks in, you're like, I'm better than this. I'm
Yeah.
better than all these people.
And
You
how
know?
often is that the case? I mean, when people look for jobs, like, and are desperate for some things, like it's something to like fill a need, and it's not something going to leave in like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Typically,
no,
they're gonna,
yeah,
yeah,
you're right. You're right. I just imagine that 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 thought process is based on some evidence.
yeah,
I don't know evidence of what, but it's probably based on some evidence or some like nexus point in the past that then informed that policy going forward.
yeah.
Something happened because some guy was overqualified and they're like, we're never doing this again. You
And
know?
that to me is the research I want to see, because it, again, I've not seen that research that points that, or the companies that actually like don't hire based upon overqualifications or semi underqualifications. Like if you're looking for 5 years and you get somebody that's like 3 or 4 years, like where is it wrong to hire that person? What data are you utilizing to substantiate that it's that's not the right fit? So things like that is kind of what I don't know. It
Yeah, I
just kind of
mean,
rubs me
did
the
you
wrong way.
see there was this whole debate that blew up on Twitter. I don't know if you're on Twitter like that.
No, no, no. What was it?
But about some guy in Silicon Valley, I forget his name, but he was giving a speech somewhere. It looked like a sort of TED type arrangement, and he was speaking to this group of people. And he was saying you essentially shouldn't. He was speaking to like startup founders, maybe people who are trying to get into the startup space in
Yep.
Silicon Valley, and he was telling them you shouldn't hire anyone over 30. All right, that's
Oh,
essentially
wow.
what he said. Don't hire anyone over 30. And it became this whole
Yeah.
discussion, not a discussion. It became a debate that was full of insults just being hurled back and forth on
Yeah.
Twitter because of people's philosophies on the whole
Right.
issue. Of course, there's the whole idea that it's illegal to discriminate by
Yeah. Yeah.
age
Yeah. Yep.
in the hiring process. So there's that. But yeah, that's what he said. He was like, "Don't hire anyone over 30." I can't even remember his logic. But I think a lot of it just has to do with how much you can pay or how much you want to pay.
Yeah.
Of course, this is America.
Yeah.
Capitalism can't help itself. And
Right.
so I think a lot of that is informed by how much you can pay and also malleability of younger people. Yeah, younger people are much easier to box into some toxic culture
Yeah.
than a 30-plus-year-old person who kind of has more responsibilities and has been around for a bit.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot of reasons why that is toxic and why that is preferred in that context.
Yeah.
And
I
it was an
mean,
interesting debate. I wasn't. I was outside the club looking in. I was like, huh. I was reading comments. I was like, huh,
yeah.
huh.
Yeah,
You know?
I would definitely, I want to go read that, because I'm just thinking there's a lot of like folks who get into the field who are over 30, like entry level. So there's a lot of malleability there when it comes to like, teaching them how to do certain things because they don't know. But I guess, yeah, maybe I'm just speaking out of like ignorance. I'll probably have to read more and look into that. Um,
I don't know either. It's just something you should check it out. There was definitely a huge debate on Twitter about it.
cool, cool. All right, so you finished school, and after that, what happened? After you finish, the school stops for what? I can't
College.
think. College, yeah, college.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I went to work in Ohio. I
Okay.
went to work in a hospital in Ohio. I wanted more experience sort of figuring out if I wanted
Okay.
to be a physician.
Yep.
And so I worked in this very fast-paced orthopedic hospital. They mostly specialized in joint replacements.
Okay.
which was also just so wild to me, the scale of America's healthcare, because how do you have a hospital that's dedicated to joint replacements?
Yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah,
wild to me.
yeah.
But yeah, but so being in Ohio was very enlightening for me for a lot of reasons. It definitely showed me I didn't want to be a physician like that, uh, but also it showed me, the possibilities in healthcare and what
Okay.
this could look like in my home country and on the continent. It also showed me how the US healthcare system works, which is wild, but
Yeah,
that's a story for another day.
yeah,
And also exposed me to a lot of affluence that I hadn't ever seen before in my life. Those doctors were wealthy.
yeah, yeah,
Ohio was New Albany, Ohio is the most affluent place I've ever lived in. I've never
wow,
seen so many. Everyone I interacted with was a rich man or a
yeah,
rich woman. It
wow,
felt like everyone I interacted with was rich.
yeah,
And
wow,
I was the only black person for miles in that place.
yeah. How was that? How was your experience like being like the only black
Ah,
person? Like,
it feels like an out of body experience. I think
yeah,
it's one of those things that I w- I'd never processed it while I was there.
mhm,
I think I processed it afterwards,
yeah,
just because I was just living every day, going to work, coming back home every day. So I didn't really quite process what it was like, but I just know that it was and also I think because of where I'm from, I think one of the things that my perception of of racial bias, of discrimination, of microaggressions, all these terms that I learned in America. I didn't come to America knowing any of these things. And because you don't know these things as an African, these are not things you look for,
yeah,
right? And I think partly the difference in the African experience versus the African American experience is why there's a divide between Africans and African Americans. They don't necessarily get along a lot, in my experience, because we don't really identify with that experience, that the sort of the racial experience that African Americans have had to deal with.
yeah, yeah.
Even though we don't identify with it, it doesn't mean we don't experience it. We just don't know how to articulate it. We don't know
Right,
what it looks like,
right, yeah,
you know. For me in college, for example, or even just generally, or most of my time in America, when things happened to me, I didn't think, oh, it's because I'm black. I just thought, no, it didn't happen. Let me just go try here.
yeah, yep, yep,
I just go and see, oh, these guys didn't let me into this club. But like, all
yep,
right, okay, let me just go try that one,
right,
And then
yeah,
my friend would be like, no, Shem, there's no reason they shouldn't let you in here.
yeah, yeah,
They'd be like, oh, they'd be like, oh, I had a lot of experiences like that. I'm just like, oh, you mean I'm like, oh, that's shocking. I didn't think anyone would. I just didn't think it was even
right,
possible for that to happen. So in the
yeah,
same way in Ohio, things would happen. And in hindsight, I'd be like, oh, that was probably because I was black, but I didn't know at the time.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I mean, I lived. Let me give you one example. I lived in a massive estate by myself. That's a whole story for another day. But just know, I lived in a 15,000 square foot mansion by myself in this gated community
yeah,
full of mansions,
okay,
and I used to bike. I used to bike to work.
hmm,
I used to bike to work. I also used to bike to the grocery store,
okay,
right? And this one time, uh, the wife of one of the bosses I worked for
mhm,
almost called the cops because she saw a black dude biking in the gated community, right? And this is not something I was privy to,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But what happened was at the Christmas party, at the work Christmas party at the end of the year, my one of my doctor friends comes to me and he's drunk, so now he's able to tell me. He probably wasn't gonna ever
yeah,
tell me this.
yeah,
He was like, "Yo," he was like, "Did this guy tell you what his wife did the other day?" Right? And I was like, "No." I was like, "Why?" He was like, "This guy's wife almost called the cops because she saw you riding your bike in the neighborhood."
yeah.
And I was like,
Why?
"Why would she do that?"
Right, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Um, but then he was like, I mean, he was like, Shem, listen, you know where you live, right? There's
right,
no people that look like you that live in that place,
right,
that bike around there ever, right?
yeah,
And so again, in my head, this is a real conversation that we had after
right,
like several shots of tequila, right?
right, yeah,
But
yeah,
again, in that moment, still, I didn't process what it could mean,
right, right,
right?
yeah,
And then I remember the guy's wife actually came over and she was like, "Yeah, listen," and then she starts apologizing. But again, I wouldn't have known that she tried to
right,
call the cops, right? I
right,
wouldn't have known until that dinner because before, fortunately, before she called the cops, she called her husband.
yeah,
And she was like, "There's a guy biking." And he was like, "No, that's Shem."
Yeah.
He was like, "That's probably Shem."
Yeah.
Right? If she hadn't called him first, she
Yeah.
probably would have called the cops on me,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? And then so she came over and she was explaining to me what happened. And she's like, "I'm really sorry." I was like, "I didn't call. I called my husband first and he told me I didn't know who you are. I'm sorry. You should come over for dinner."
Yeah.
You know? It was this whole thing, right?
Uh,
And then when I told one of my friends about it, she was said, "Shem, you realize that people die in America all the time because of
yeah.
stuff like this.
Yep.
Like you're
Yep.
biking around, some people would have shot you before asking any
Yeah.
questions,
Yep.
you know?" And
Yeah.
that's a perspective I would have never considered
Right.
because that's not the worldview I had,
Right. Yeah. No, I
you
think
know?
that's a really, really good point. So it, you heard of Clubhouse, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, the app,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So
RIP. Yeah.
yeah, RIP for sure. So I think Clubhouse was good and bad for me in a sense where it exposed me to a lot of people's experiences to racism within the country. Because, like you said, like I had my blinders on because of my background when it came to like some of the racial experiences that I had in high school and I think even in college. I had my blinders on. I was really focused more so on like, all right, whatever, it happened to me. It probably happens to a lot of other people, but it's not necessarily the case. It's just it's things that the way my perspective was on it was completely different. So for a lot of I think African Americans who face racism daily and experience that, whether it's through family or friends or whatever it is, like they were used to kind of those experiences and they saw that and they can tell for what it was. My perspective was our perspective, I guess, in a sense, was completely different. So their take on it versus our take, um, you know, had a lot of differences in terms of like our reactions at times. And maybe if we had that same perspective, we'll probably react the same way. And I think one of the bringing it back to Clubhouse now, one of the things that I liked about Clubhouse is the fact that it gave me a lot more um introspective look in terms of like why people felt the way that they felt in regards to how they were treated either at work or just living life in general. And then of course with the onset of all the things that happen with Black Lives Matter and all of the other injustices that we've seen literally happen, like that started having me think a lot more from introspectively, like what are things that I haven't necessarily appreciated, not only from the sense of like being being in America, but also being an African in America and not necessarily having um, that experience initially. Because if I did have the same experiences that they did, many of my African American friends, I probably would have reacted differently in many different senses. But I appreciate that I didn't have that experience. But it's it's something that it's a benefit for me, but it's also like something I need to take. It's also a privilege in a sense that many folks um, didn't have the opportunity to necessarily be blind to those things. And not that you should be, but the fact that you are blind to those things is a privilege that you haven't had to like face those things,
Mm,
and it's had traumatic, effects on you and your family. So I think oftentimes we as Africans we do forget that. So I don't want to get too deep into the
mm,
weeds of that, but I think it is very important that we acknowledge that it is a benefit that we've had to not have to deal with that daily and have our family subject to those things. So when we do come here, we do have those opportunities to just focus on work and not focus on like what we call rubbish or just people just being people.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
um, we
Yeah.
we don't often look at that as a as a benefit. So anyway, I know
True.
I'm going on a
I
tangent.
yeah, I don't want to belabor this point, but I will say you should totally, if you haven't yet, you should watch Ahir Shah. Ahir Shah has a stand-up
Okay,
special on Netflix. It's an Indian guy. It's called
I'm
Ahir
taking notes
Shah.
right now. Okay,
AHIRSSHAH. And it's called Ends. Ends like the British ends, how the Brits say that man from the ends.
yeah,
But yeah, it's called Ends. So it's Ahir Shah, And it's very good just because it touches on this topic. But one of the things that he says a lot is he talks about the goal for people, the goal for minorities,
Hmm.
I guess, wherever they are, in whatever context they are, the goal for minorities progressively over time is just to be able to go without saying, right? Just be a regular person. It doesn't
Yep.
have to be identified, but just like
Yep.
be normal, right?
Right.
That's what he talks about. It's an excellent
Yeah.
special. I highly recommend it. But anyway, let's
Yeah. No, I
let's
definitely,
let's
yeah, I definitely got to go watch that, man.
yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay, so uh, I guess getting back on topic a bit, you finish out in Ohio, and then what happens post Ohio?
Post Ohio, my work permit expires. I have to figure out how to stay in America.
Okay.
Because I just had on the news Trump saying he would like for anyone who gets a college degree in America to get a green card. I was like, where was this logic in 2013 when but yeah, so after Ohio, my work permit expired. That's really what sort of ended the Ohio experience. It was
Okay.
my work permit that expired, and so I had to figure that out.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing was going to the only way for an international student for well, not an international, but anyone on an F1 visa in America to stay in the country is either you have to get married
Hmm.
or you have to have a fancy job
Hmm.
uh, with specialist expertise
Yep.
that's valuable enough for you to get an H-1B visa or some other specialty visa, or you have to go back to school. Those are the only options. And at the time, I didn't have one or two. I wasn't going to get married. I didn't have a specialty job.
Hmm.
And so I ended up going back to Duke. So, not back, but I ended up going to Duke. So that's how I went to Duke to do a master's in global health. Also because I had now figured out that what I wanted to do was more health system, health policy wide type work. And so going into global health made sense for me at the time.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
yeah, so that's what happened. So there was a bit of a gap in time there between leaving Ohio and and entering Duke University that
Okay.
it's almost a year. I had so much happen in that year, which we won't get into now, unless you want to. But it'll be very much a derailment of the conversation.
Gotcha.
But so then I got into Duke Global Health. My focus was health economics and health policy. Because again, I wanted to really delve into how health works, how the financing of health works, how do we make it sustainable, things like that.
Gotcha. So from school in South Florida to the infrastructure slash like differences in Duke, because I'm a big Duke fan. Like I actually wanted to go to
Mm,
Duke.
that's
Um,
rare.
I did. I wanted to go to Duke. I'm a big Blue Devil guy. I don't
I
know
feel
what.
like I feel like no one likes Duke unless they went
No, I
there.
love Duke, man. I mean, basketball.
That's
We're not gonna get
hilarious.
into it, but like sports, I was actually gonna go to Duke for sports also. But anyway, a side note. What's the differences like when it came to like looking at being at the school in South Florida versus like being at Duke infrastructure
Oof,
wise?
levels, man,
Night and day.
levels. No, man, being there, being at Duke, I realized so many things
Mhm.
while I was at Duke. I had a fantastic time at Duke. I think that's probably why I love that school so much because I just really enjoyed being there for so many reasons. One, because again, Duke in comparison to my undergrad was very, again, liberal white, most predominantly white liberal arts school.
Gotcha.
We were like all the black people in the university could be in a WhatsApp group with me. Actually, I think they are in a WhatsApp group with me.
Like all.
All of them. We used to sit in the same corner. All of us used to sit in the same corner of the cafeteria.
Yeah.
The basketball players
Wow.
and the non-athletes that were black. All of us used to sit in the same corner of the cafeteria, right? And
Was
that
it
was really essentially
segregation?
no. It's a call it what you will, but you want to be
Okay.
around your people.
Yeah.
And I mean, the athletes had like a section. You know how
Yeah. Yeah.
athletes
No,
in
I
college
get
in,
that
in
part, but I mean,
college
like
in
the fact
college are
that
like demigods, right?
yeah,
So they
so
they
I get
definitely
that
have
part
their own
though,
section.
man.
But then us, well, we did have like two white friends in our friend group, like two. But for the most part, we used to sit on the same table in the cafeteria every day, and it
Oh
was just
man. Okay.
mostly all of us,
Okay.
And but yeah, but that was it. They weren't more than 50 black people in that university. Not more than
Okay.
50. I would be
Wow.
surprised if there were more than 50.
Athletes included.
Athletes included,
Wow.
at least at the time. Maybe let me push it to 100. I'd be surprised if there were more than 100. That I would be shocked,
Okay. Wow.
you
Okay.
know? And I knew all of them. Yeah, the bar is if I know every black person in the school, then there are very few.
Hold on, hold on. Let's step
Yeah?
back. So you're saying Duke is really diverse, but there's only 50 so black
No, that was
people.
my undergrad. That was my undergrad.
Oh, okay. Grad school is different.
Yes, grad school's different. Duke had so many, a lot more people.
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So South Florida was the one with like 50 black people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, okay. I was like,
Absolutely.
that's what I was thinking when you said Duke. I was like, Duke?
No, 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 no. No, Duke was more diverse. Duke was more
Okay.
diverse, but also just, you know, Duke showed me why people go to universities like
Yep.
Duke,
Yep.
right? I realized it. I mean, I think that, I mean, it's also plays into my philosophy about higher education in
Yeah.
general at this point in time. I think if you didn't have to get a college degree to apply for a job,
Mhm.
you can very much learn almost anything you want to on the internet now.
Yep. Yep.
The main value that I think higher education provides is, of course, the exposure to
Yep.
different people, to different
Yep.
ideas, to different contexts, but also it's the networks.
Right.
I think, and that's the difference, right? Of course, I've built networks in my undergrad. I built networks that some have persisted to this day. And then, but then you have other networks at a university like Duke, where Duke, because of the scale it's at,
Yeah.
you Tim Cook went to Duke, so Tim Cook would show up at Duke on the Duke campus, and you could meet him,
Wow.
and you could
Yeah.
get an internship with. So Duke has this like internship pipeline with Apple, right?
Nice.
Would
Yeah.
never happen at my undergrad, no
Wow.
chance.
Yeah.
Joe Biden came to Duke a bunch of times,
Yeah.
and so it's just that level,
Yep.
that a university, the level of access to other opportunities that being at a university like that gives. That's the reason why I think people would go to a university like Duke, because otherwise there's no really there's not much there isn't a big difference qualitatively
Yeah.
on the quality of education.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a really good point. I think even for me, the only thing I'd say outside of the things that you already mentioned, that I went to University of Maryland, Terps. I think also like independent living, that kind of gave me a sense of like being able to do that on my own a bit outside of like my parents and all that jazz. So it taught me from a microcosm standpoint, like to be able to do that. But I did, like you said, get a chance to meet a lot of individuals and a lot of like um, exposure to networks that I probably wouldn't have had if for my grad school, I went to Salisbury, which is a much smaller school. I never got to see like the levels when it came to the type of people that they brought on campus. Do you think from a um, educational standpoint, um, let me rephrase it. How did that help you in terms of like your perspective from a networking standpoint, and then also from like, what you wanted to do, what you wanted to be? Did that have any impact in regards to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, Duke was a game changer for me. The networks that I have to this day from Duke, incredible. Duke also helped me get my first job out of
Yep.
college,
Yep.
right? And so I worked with my advisor that I was paired with, and Duke runs these massive research programs in East Africa
Yep.
around neurosurgery and infectious disease. And working with them for 2 years as a research assistant as part of my master's requirement, I was able to sort of learn, what their challenges were, understand what they were trying to do there,
Yep.
understand the kind of partnerships they needed to be successful.
Yep.
And by the time I graduated, and I was panicking because of post-graduation anxiety, like what am I going to do? Where am I going to
Yep.
get a job? Because again, F1 visa, you graduate, that clock starts ticking again and again. You have to figure out if you want to stay or if you want to go home.
Yep.
So it's not bad to go home. You just need to have a plan,
Yeah.
because your parents are like, okay,
What's
where's the
next?
job?
Right. Yeah.
What's up,
Yep.
But then so what ended up happening was, after working with them for 2 years, I understood the process so well that I wrote my own job description. I told them,
Nice.
I understand what you've been doing. I understand the challenges you have. I can help you fix these problems.
Right.
This is what I will do. This is how much you should pay me. Send me home.
Nice. Nice.
And
Yeah.
Duke sent me home as the program manager Uganda in
Wow.
East Africa for Duke. And
Yeah.
again, the opportunities that came, and also of course there's the name. Every time you
Yeah.
say Duke, everyone's like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
right? So it's very it's stuff that isn't necessarily real. It just is what it is.
Right.
Sometimes it's elitist, and I have my own feelings about that sometimes.
Yep.
But it is what it is. It is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Duke name and the Duke networks have definitely helped me a lot in my career.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It helped me get visas. It
yeah.
helped me get visas. I'll be in the visa office at the US Embassy, and the lady will be like, "Oh, you went to Duke?
Yeah.
Oh, how's North
Wow.
Carolina?" I'll be like, "All
Yeah.
of a sudden I have a visa."
Yeah.
The guy behind me, mm-mm, mm-mm. I've actually seen this happen multiple times,
Wow.
right? Of like going to the visa office in Uganda. And
Niggas
you,
laughing about it here.
when you're in the visa, when you're in the
Yeah.
line for the visa, they have you in these lines for days, man.
Yeah.
Not days, but literally, not days, literally, but hours in a day.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
in a line with the same people. So eventually, you begin to talk to each other,
Right.
and so you always know at least the two guys in front of you and the two guys behind you because you're
Yeah.
always like moving on the same through the same
Yeah. Yeah.
seats,
Yep. Yep.
before you enter for your interview. And eventually you get to know, oh, this guy here is going to do some conference. This guy is going to college in some remote town in the middle of nowhere in the US. Everyone has a thing they're trying to do.
Right.
And then we get in there, right? We get in there, and I remember the specific time, and the guy goes in there, and this lady just like rips into him,
Yeah.
asks him all these questions about his degree and what he's trying to do. And
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, he has all the paperwork. He's trying to go to school. He has all the
Right.
documents. It's here,
It's not
you
Duke
know?
though.
And she just said no. She just said no. I can never forget. And the hard part about that visa process is the second you go in there, we're not going to talk to you again. Like it's done.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you get in there, you go out, and then you go home and you deal with your sadness by yourself. The rest of us, this kind of look from our benches like, oh, he got the pink slip. He didn't get because the slips have different colors. Like
Oh no. So you get to
if you
see
get
what
like a red slip, yeah, exactly. So you know. So we're all just sitting on the couch like, oh, he got a red slip. Oh man, that's not good.
oh
And
yeah,
then I
yeah.
walk in there. So now he goes ahead of me. So then I
Yeah.
walk in there and I'm terrified. I'm like, oh man, this because sometimes the visa process is like it's very much based on individuals.
Hmm.
Like if you find someone in there that's just harsh for
Yeah.
whatever reason that day, then it's going to be a long day
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
many people
Yeah.
you know. And so I walk in there, I'm terrified now, And the lady, and she's like, yes, hello, good morning. She doesn't even like look in your eyes.
Yeah.
She just like says, okay, that's Shem. Yes, okay, give me your I-20. She starts asking you for documents,
Right.
barely making eye contact, right?
Yeah.
And then the second she sees Duke University,
Glows up.
she's like, oh, I was like, you guys, you have to be kidding me, man. You know? And everything just like, she was
Yeah.
like, have fun at school.
Yeah.
Bye.
That's
You know?
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's things like that. It
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that question prior is because I think a lot of times, like you said, when you initially were picking school, it's not just I'm not picking on you or anything like that, but when we pick schools, oftentimes I don't think we think of the importance of like where we're going and sort of like what you want to do. Um, you know, once you're in that school and how to utilize like the nuances tied to the school you're going to, like Duke being reputable for XYZ reasons. How can you use that to your benefit as an individual? So this is not just, of course, from a tech standpoint. This is in general. If you're going to a university, what are things that you plan on doing while at that university outside of studying? There's so many other nuances with going to a good school that I don't think we take advantage of. And the fact that you went to a great school, you utilize the networks that you still keep in touch with even to this day that help build certain bridges that may expand to other lanes. I think that's very important. Of course, we've heard the whole adage of how network and net worth and all this other jazz, but um, when it comes to like progressing into different areas that may be blockers, I think oftentimes we forget that school plays a very important role in that. Even if you talk about from a for those who do boot camps and stuff like that, I'm going back to the tech space now, where you go do your boot camps, like all those things are important to research because you get to network with other individuals and it kind of places you in that kind of circle that you
Mm.
can maybe be able to call upon later down the line. It's not always the case, but it's certainly a factor to think about when you look from an education perspective. So I'm hoping that what you just shared there, people think about a lot more when it comes to picking a school, especially those in the continent as a whole. Don't pick a random institution just because you want to get out of the space.
Yeah,
Now, if that's your only option, okay, I get
yeah.
it. But if
See,
you have an
I was
option,
yeah. See, I was just about to say, okay, so I agree with you. I agree with you. Obviously, I do, but it's complicated, right? I think when I think about two different people, an American born and raised in America,
Mhm.
thinking about going to college, and then African, no matter how wealthy they may be,
Yep,
because more often than not, when Africans come to America, they have money to go to college, right? More often than not.
yep,
Um, so those two people think about that experience very differently, and those two people plan for that experience very differently.
yep,
And my only insight into what that looks like is maybe the conversations I had with some of my American friends while I was in college, and generally even to this day. They talk about like, oh, I wanted to leave Indiana. I was tired of being in Indiana. I wanted to go somewhere else.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
I got a lot of that of like just I wanted to leave home.
yep,
I got a lot of there were a few people, and of course, this is also a function of the universities you end up in. When I went to Duke, now it becomes people uh, either their parents are legacies or they are a bit more ambitious. So they're like, oh, I wanted to go to Duke because I'm trying to, they're a bit more strategic about it,
yep,
right? But at the undergrad level, it was mostly I just wanted to leave home. It was close by. This is the school that gave me the most money, things like that. That's what the American perspective looked like. The African perspective, usually, there's a small percentage of people from the African continent coming to America that I know of that apply to Harvard, Cornell, these apply to Ivy League
yeah,
universities,
yep,
right? Or just big schools, prestigious schools like that,
right,
for a variety of reasons. But mostly, I think the main consideration is money.
yep,
The main consideration is money. For all of these, for most of the people that come
right,
from the African continent that I've met,
yeah. No, no,
right?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Like
Yes.
if you have the opportunity to pay for a school and you can afford it, um, I think that's where I'm getting at. It's like if you can afford whether Harvard or Salisbury University, in my case,
Oh, yeah. If
like
you can afford it, go to
yeah,
Harvard, man.
yeah,
Yeah. If they
but
let you in, go.
yeah, but if you go to Harvard, just don't go there to say I went to Harvard and just get the education. It's also what are you gonna abstract from Harvard while you're there?
Mm,
What are you gonna extract from it? From building relationships, things like that. And I don't think oftentimes like we look at it, we just think, oh yeah, I can just say I went to Harvard. But there's other things
yeah.
what you can do while you're on the campus that can actually get you into other doors. And that's my hope is like,
Yeah.
and even if it's like Salisbury University, which no shade on my school, guys.
You'll be shitting on your school, bro.
No,
I
no
hope they don't
shade.
see this pod.
No shade. No
I
shade,
hope they don't see
Salisbury.
this pod. They'll be like Salisbury University.
We're a small school, go goals. But at the end of the day, it's like I was focused on building relationships as well while there, and I got into school because I got a great relationship with one of the directors there for Powerful Connections. They helped me get my GA, which paid for my schooling. So to me, like that relationship to this day still stands. Mr. Vaughn White, thank you for everything that you've done. If you're watching this podcast, um, it it's it's those things that for me that I did that I didn't think about consciously at the time, but I was really focused on building relationships, and it probably dawned on me maybe like 2 years post grad that um, making friendships and building like sort of like the different connections um, was what helped me throughout paying like for instance I work for the track coach for what's Jim Jones. I worked for him for a couple years that helped me to pay for like little odd ending deals. And he's even to this day he still pings me and contacts me for like other things, networking. I get like free tickets and things like that to like events. But those are things I never thought about while in school now, but those are
Mm.
things now that it's a benefit now. So for
Yeah,
me, I'm hoping that others, you know, those are things that I didn't know. So I'm hoping that from
yeah,
my lack of knowledge, those are things that you could take advantage of. If you're going to like these schools, if you're going to these boot camps, you think about, okay, how can this help me 5, 10 years down the line? Think about those
yeah,
things when you're making
yeah.
those
I mean,
decisions.
I think safely put, people should assume that the main importance of formal education at this point is extracurricular activities.
Yep. Networking. Yeah. Yep.
That's the main purpose it serves.
Yep.
The education, the classroom stuff, you can learn everything online.
Yep.
Every
Yep.
single thing that you're learning, you can learn online. School is for making friends and for finding opportunities. That's
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Everyone should know this.
Yep.
And this is how you should think about it. And the
Yeah.
second you land on campus, you should be thinking, who do I need? Where do who are my friends? Where do I get
Right.
my friends? And what opportunities does this university provide?
Right. Yeah.
That's
And
it.
I don't know if there's a study about this, but I would love to. There probably is a study. I would love to see like the numbers of folks who actually graduated and actually still doing what they went to school for versus pivoting to whether it's a different sector in like the same lane or not. I would want to
I mean,
see
I know that would be a fun study in Uganda. I don't know about here.
that.
In Uganda, it's the funniest thing, man. One of my favorite experiences in Uganda is to just like ask people what they studied in university,
Hmm.
right? Because, and I also realize this because for a lot of my friends who are pretty good friends of mine, I don't
Right.
even know what they studied in university. I don't,
Yeah.
right? And then randomly something will happen. And I remember it's like so a long time ago, maybe 2021. I started a sort of data science as a service consultancy.
Okay.
I was just starting my career in data science and all that stuff. And so I was trying to help companies sort of figure out their information
Hmm.
and what those systems look like, and depending on the context of the company and things like that. And I remember I wanted to get a sort of pool of statisticians and data scientists that I could sort of send work to. It's a model that we see around, and Della
Yeah.
has done that before, things like that. I wanted to get a pool of data scientists to sort of send work to when I was overwhelmed and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of my friends was like, "Hey, you should hit up so and so. She, she's a statistician." I said, "She's a what? She's a what? Do you know what this woman does? She's
No.
an event planner. She plans weddings and birthday parties. That's what she
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
But that is what it's like to come up in Uganda.
Yeah.
Eventually, a lot of these professions don't pay as well
Yeah.
as
Yep.
parties.
Yep.
For some reason, Africans like to party, and
Yeah.
so
For some reason, right?
being a government statistician will pay
Yeah.
you the equivalent of $500 a month, and
Wow.
you can make $500 on the weekend planning a
Wow.
wedding.
Yeah. Huh.
And so a lot of my friends sort of pivoted out of their industries into the entertainment space, into the service industry
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
And so now
No.
I have a friend who is essentially a lobbyist in Uganda, essentially in the sense that all he does is like, oh, these guys from Norwegian, no, from
Yeah.
Norway want to build some energy project in Western Uganda. They come to me, I take them to the president because I have access to these things, right?
Gotcha.
That's literally what he does. And he just gets cuts, just gets
Wow.
cuts.
Yeah.
And that's what he keeps doing. I was like, this
Yeah.
is essentially, yeah, what is this? What are you doing? Right? And then, but this is how Africa works. And
Yeah.
then, no, this is how the world works. This happens
Yeah. Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then, but then I remember he did like some complex economics course.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, when did you even study this stuff? But also, I have a lot of friends that have really high level degrees that they don't use.
Yeah.
Versus all my friends in America, they are living and working in the professions they studied.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
So it's
mean,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, I think in that regard, and maybe it's just me. I went to school for cardiopulmonary, but I'm
What do you mean cardiopulmonary?
So I did like stress testing and all that other jazz. So my hope in the end was to be like a physician, was to go for all that other jazz. I thought
Mm,
about doing neurosurgery and whatever, but
mm.
I found out I
I can
hated,
connect you.
but no, I found out I hated blood. So I didn't know how
You
that.
hated.
So the sight of blood. So I don't know how that was gonna work.
That's funny. That's funny.
But anyway, it's I have a lot
Mm.
of friends, at least in my space, where you know, RIP to MySpace, that uh
MySpace?
yeah, yeah,
My,
that
fuck
they
Clubhouse? No, MySpace? My guy. Uh-huh.
so I have a lot of friends that are like, they went to school for something completely different and they're doing something completely different now, which I think it's fine. I mean, you're figuring out yourself. I think, of course, during 18, whatever your teenage years or early, adulthood, like you're still figuring out who you are yourself. So to pick a degree or major, whatever it is, like a lot of folks don't really know what it is that they
Mm,
want to do
mm,
until later down the line. So I think, with that being said, that's why I wholeheartedly agree with you when it comes to like, when you go to school, don't focus so much just on the education itself. Like the networking, the extracurricular activities that you get from school, that's literally what's probably going to last with you long
mhm.
term down the line, because you figure out who you are more so with, your through those conversations and those relationships that you're building, more so than you do, sitting in an institution learning about, you know
Yeah.
trigonometry. You
Yeah.
learn a bunch
And
of stuff in there.
yeah. And the internet has democratized knowledge to the point that it's never too late to change what you want to do.
Yep. Yep.
Right? You can start. I have a relative who just became a business analyst. She's like 40 something. She just
Yeah.
like took a bunch of boot camps, like you said, and then now she's working for some company, making a ton of money
Yeah.
in data. Which if you know this woman, you know there's no way this could have ever been where she would be right now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. But yeah, but that's again the value of the internet. That's the value of technology and what has happened. It has just blown everything up. And I'm a writer now. I decided I want to write because I like writing, right? I just started doing that a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't the plan, but now it's something that I want to do,
Yeah.
right? And I've, made steps to doing that,
Gotcha.
newsletters and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's stick on that. So fast forward to now. You're now. So I know you went to back to Uganda and you were working there for a bit. What did you do actually before we get to that? What did you do in Uganda?
In Uganda. So for Duke, I was a program manager. I
Okay.
mostly provided logistical and technical support. Okay, that sounds like jargon. Wait, let me say it simpler. So we had a bunch of research projects
Hmm.
happening in East Africa, and
Okay.
my job was to make sure those projects happened well and on time.
Okay. And how did you do that?
Um, a huge part of that process was partnership engagement.
Okay.
All I had to do was build relationships with the stakeholders that mattered in that context, which was government officials, Ministry of Health type stuff, academics because of research, physicians also because of research, and patient care and things like that, and private sector partners and donors, international donors.
Gotcha.
So that was my space. I had to speak to these people. I had to bring them. I had to congregate them very often, do a lot of presentations with them,
Yeah.
draft a lot of policy memos to sort of convince them that the journey we were on was the right course, things like that. That's what I did most of the time, especially towards the end. In the beginning, I was very much a researcher. I used to do a lot of data stuff and building systems, and then I built the systems, and then I sort of everything was working without me. So I then moved to just the relationship building stuff and building partnerships that could be sustained over time. So that's a lot of what I did. I used to sit in an office and either draft letters or create presentations or make sure that all the stakeholders were happy with the direction we were going in.
Okay. And then you finished that, and then
So I finished that, and then I was that was like the highest position I could get to,
okay.
mostly because I created the job. Um, and so but I know that I wanted to be in leadership in health. I wanted to be
Okay.
a leader in health. I want to run large health organizations, mostly because not because I'm like,
Yeah.
obsessed with the idea of being like the head of WHO.
Right.
No, it's really because I want to be in position to influence change and in health. And right now, I mean, as I go on, I know that the uh, the idea of impact in health is a complicated one because I think people that work on the front lines probably are more in the business of impact than any of us.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I also know that the policymakers have the power to drive that change
Right.
over significant miles, a lot farther than a physician could ever do.
Right.
And so I want to be part of partnering with the frontline workers to drive that change because the frontline workers connect you to the community. So
Okay.
you really understand what's happening. And so you're able to make those decisions. And then you have an understanding of how the whole system works from that large level. So then you're able to pull on different levers, international partners, government, so that you can make things actually move, so you can actually make people's lives better.
Okay.
And in order to do that, I needed to do a doctorate and leadership stuff. And so that's
Okay.
why I came to DC. And I came to DC also because all the international organizations that I would probably work with are headquartered here for the most part. The WHOs, the Global Funds, the PEPFARs, the USAIDs, all of them are here. And so there was an inclination for me to understand how those players work and how they see the problems that they're
Gotcha.
trying to solve.
Okay. In terms
Yeah.
of tools, like there's a guy that's in Atlanta. He has a policy like tool. Basically, it's like AI tool that essentially what it does is scans like if you're looking for a specific policy. Let's say you want a policy on like driving maternal health, outcomes that are progressive, whatever it is, in Uganda. It's an AI tool that basically scans like what policies are out there globally, and then it basically um, creates a custom policy for you. Do you have something like that that you plan on using, or is there something like that you already are using?
I mean, speaking, using for what exactly? For when I get to that point where I'm the
When you
one
get to
doing the
that point, yeah.
policy?
When you get to, I'm already speaking into existence.
Yeah,
You're-
I receive it. I receive it. I receive it. Thank you, brother.
so
Probably. I mean, again, I'm very tech inclined, and
okay,
so if there's technology that can make the decision process shorter,
yep,
then I'll use it. However, it has to be hand in hand with the reality on the ground.
yeah,
It has to, it
yep,
has to, it has to work very seamlessly with the context. It has to be a facilitator, at least for now, before we achieve AGI as OpenAI keeps threatening every day.
yeah, yeah,
Before we achieve AI, where this thing is autonomous and thinking for
right,
us and all that stuff, and maybe we even are inclined to trust what it says. That's
right,
an entirely different story. But for now,
okay, yep,
what that would look like because there's lots of policy toolkits out there
right,
because policies at least implemented the world over are essentially the same, right? When you look at any industry, whether it's traffic, everyone's doing fines, doing speed limits, doing seat belts, doing it's the same stuff across the world, right?
yeah,
Because over time we begin to understand that certain things work better than others and there's a lot of evidence to support this and whatnot. And so it's easy to create a policy toolkit with recommendations to solve specific problems.
mhm,
And so that's useful because it at least narrows down your options for things to think about. But then your frontline expertise also checks in into the chat because then you need to understand, okay, but I'm from this village, I'm from this place. Would this actually work?
yep,
Does
yep,
this make sense?
right,
There's also a part of the job that involves what we call formative research, which is talking to the people on the ground and understanding their experience, understanding their perception of the problem, and involving them in the process of finding the solution.
right,
Right. So then you have this meeting of ideas, and then in that pocket in between those ideas, you're able to then say, okay, well, there's also this stuff I've been thinking. What do you think about these solutions? Do these sort of make sense for your context? Can we tweak this somehow? And so that toolkit becomes a facilitator to this larger conversation. And I
yeah,
will definitely be using things like that. Absolutely.
yeah. No, I think what you said just makes complete sense. I think when we look at like you know ChatGPT or other AI related type tools, um, I forget what the term is, but we want to make sure it's formative to our current culture slash infrastructure, because a lot of
Mm.
things it doesn't think in terms of like um, the norms, the practices, and sort of like the culture around how things are done within a specific country. So I think that's extremely important. I'm forgetting the name of the terminology. You may know it, but how
What?
we're huh
No, the what? The what? I'm trying to
how we're
help.
basically training AI to be smart about its thinking process when it comes to like different cultures. Like I know with ChatGPT, you can
Ah,
say, "Imagine I am a person," blah blah blah. Like you can give it
right,
like
right, right, right,
prompts.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Uh,
No, yeah. I don't know the word for that, but I understand
yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think things like that, it's like it's very important that we were able to think contextually, like where we're at, where the population we're trying to serve, where they're at, and trying to meet them in the middle, and be able to format policies and solutions that are driven to help them succeed to the best of their ability, versus thinking in a perfect utopian
Yeah.
base
Yeah.
that,
I mean,
that
I,
we're in.
I mean, and I think, yeah, and that's the gap that's missing, right? We don't yet
Yeah,
have a way, at least a way that I know of, that is able to really teach AI what the human experience like in a specific context.
yeah,
It's like how would you explain what love feels like to an AI, right?
yeah,
What it can do, at least generative AI, could probably just, comb the internet for descriptions of love
yeah,
and what it looks like, but it doesn't know what it feels like,
right,
right? And
yeah,
so on that part, that's the gap. We don't yet know how to infuse it with this essence of this human experience that is
right,
intangible, right?
yeah.
And I don't think we ever will. That's a story for another day.
I don't know if
Until
we
maybe
want
we
to.
figure something else. I don't know if we want to.
Right.
Exactly. But so that's why for me, it's still very much primarily an idea generation tool.
Yeah, yeah,
It's still a facilitator of knowledge that already exists in an individual using it. I
right.
think that's still where it is. I'm not using it as much as everybody else out there, so I can't say. But from my experience, what I use it for, it's still very much, oh, I'm thinking about this. What ideas do you have? And I look at it, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That doesn't make sense. That okay, let's see, let's work with
Yeah.
this, things like that. I still very much use it for idea generation, and I use it maybe for editing stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna
So
ask that, like with your papers, because
yeah.
when you
Oh yeah.
started in 2010, like AI wasn't there. So you didn't have ChatGPT to write your papers. Like, how is that now when it comes to like writing like policy documents? Do you use it as much, or you?
Um, I mean, who's watching this pod? No, 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 no. Again, the way, for example, policies, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The way I use AI to write papers is again same way. It's ideas. I look for ideas, especially
Hmm.
around policies. You want options,
Hmm.
right? Give me some
Yeah,
options of,
yeah.
how you would solve this problem, right?
Right.
Then
Yep.
based on what I get, then I can do more digging.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can do a deeper dive
Yeah.
with using my expertise.
Right.
Using my expertise, I can be able to say this option doesn't make sense for this context. We're not going
Exactly.
to like
Yep.
have drones deliver medication in the
Yeah.
village in Uganda. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen,
Right.
right? So eventually, I use it to give me ideas, and then based on those ideas, it's a facilitator for the research I have to do.
Gotcha.
And then one thing that I do like to use it for is to then, sort of review the document for errors and things like that.
Okay.
It's really useful about that, just sort of formatting and then sometimes when we have group papers, right? You have a group project and then you all have to submit one paper. One of the
Yeah.
things that I use it for is like after we've all done our pieces, then I'll like throw it in there and be like, can you make all this sound like it reads like it was written by one person?
Yeah. Ah, okay.
Right,
Nice.
right. So then it
Yeah.
like, and then I tell it to highlight all the areas where it makes changes. So then I'm
Changes.
able
Yeah,
to
yeah,
look at the output and then say, no, leave it like this, right? So then I
yeah,
go in again and then
yeah.
use my own expertise and my
Smart.
discretion
Yeah,
to say,
yeah,
this makes sense, this doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Just keep this like that, stuff like
yeah,
that. So I use it in ways like that.
yeah. No, I
I
mean the
would, I
reason
would,
I
I would love, I would love for it to write the papers for me, but
asked.
I'm doing a doctorate. If I'm having AI write papers for me, they're not really learning what I'm supposed to do, so it
Yeah,
doesn't make
yeah.
sense.
Well, also like there's tools that literally catch uh, documents that are
That
fully
too.
written by
That
ChatGPT
too.
and whatnot. But I mean,
Yeah.
going back to what you were saying before, I think when it comes to like, I think we talked about it in the last pod where there's a lot of folks who um, are fully reliant on AI, which that at the end of the day, like you're gonna put yourself in more hot water than not because it's still a tool that's very much immature. It's still learning. There's still a lot of things that it gets incorrect. I'm talking even programmatically. We're talking about like ones and twos, like telling how to do certain things. Like it tries to come up with its best ways to do certain things, but at the end of the day, it's just scraping through different things and it's concatenating things together. But if it gets certain points wrong, but you don't know about it, you're going to
Yeah.
submit something that's going to be completely false. So the fact
Exactly.
that you're going
Exactly.
through and rereading and looking at, what you've submitted or you prompted it to give you, um, I think that's the way the tool should be utilized at this stage. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you brought that up that you're
Yeah.
you're doing that.
No, it's still it's again, it's very much a facilitator of expertise that already exists.
Yep. Yep.
Otherwise, you have no idea if what you're
Exactly.
submitting is correct.
Right.
Yeah, which is a
Exactly. Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yeah. I see a lot of people getting jobs and say, "Yeah, I just throw it in ChatGPT." I'm like, "No, no, that does not work. That does not work. Stop doing
Well,
that."
it's getting pretty good.
Well,
I'm telling you,
well,
people
there are
people
people
are
who
out
doing
here
it, but at the end of
surviving, man.
the
People are out here surviving on this thing. Listen,
day,
have you seen what Casa AI is able to do with code generation? Bruh, bruh,
yeah. Who's
it's
who's the guy that
crazy.
came up with the new bot that literally like he says he doesn't need engineers? There's a guy that he developed an AI bot that literally is supposed to take over the jobs of like developers. Now I think to a certain degree, it can give you the baseline of what needs to be done, but in terms of like quality control and stuff like that, it can't do it on its own. You're gonna need
Is
some
this
sort of human interaction.
is this why every website looks the same these days?
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Every product website looks the same. It's
Yeah,
massive landing page with
yeah,
big text, and then you keep scrolling down for days, and like the features keep changing. Every
yeah,
website looks the same these days, I feel like, and that's probably because of
yeah.
that.
Well,
This like
I blame
common.
Wix. I blame Wix more on that.
Well, that too. Wix, WordPress, that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
man.
even these like tech companies, all these tech companies that come up with a new like niche product, all their
Yeah,
websites look the same.
yep, yeah, yeah, man.
All their website. Yeah. But
Yeah,
anyway, who knows?
man. But man,
Yeah, and that's the thing, it loses that soul when when you remove the human being, you remove the je ne sais quoi of the
yeah,
individual,
yeah,
and then it just becomes an issue of whether or not the company cares about that,
right, right,
which
yeah,
depends on what kind of product you're selling.
yeah, yeah, and
Because if
I
you
think
want to function in the creative space, then you do need that human touch, that human touch that has a finger on the pulse of what's actually happening, has a finger on the pulse of
right.
how a human being perceives something and how they react viscerally to something.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with scaling, right? Because a lot of companies don't know how to scale the right way. Like you can grow really big and just put out cutter products, and it doesn't really matter what sector or field you're in. Same thing with like we talk about my wife and I in like real estate. We talk about uh, this mass producing like um, real estate companies where they make these cookie cutter homes, but they don't know how to customize like small things that can be more detailed or more specific to families. Same thing from a tech standpoint. You build these websites where you build certain functionalities that have no sort of like um, relevance to the product or service or whatever it is that XYZ persons are offering. And that's I think that to me I think is the issue with people that don't really know how to use AI. It's like you're spitting out stuff that has no sort of context. Oftentimes, you can still prompt it the right way, but oftentimes you're spitting out things that aren't really customized to what you know the end product should look like, and you have to be able to know what that is in order to be able to facilitate that. And I think that's the space we're going to get into, but we're not quite there yet. Whether it's writing papers, whether it's coming up with custom code, whether it's developing a website, like all these things, at this stage, regardless of what AI tool you utilize, still rely on human intervention, and you have to have that expertise to be able to tell it, okay, this is wrong or this is right, or I wanted to do this. So until we get there, we're not being phased out yet.
Mm, true. Yet. I
Yet,
just wish
yet.
and I, yeah, we probably ought to. I wish governments had the capacity to invest in AI,
Mhm.
mostly because I feel like it's a space, the public sector is the space that could really benefit from this
Yep.
most, in the sense that if AI can figure out a way to take the load of productivity away from the productivity in certain spaces.
Yeah.
If AI
Yeah.
can figure out how to produce food, AI can figure out how to, let's just stay with food. If AI
Mhm.
can figure out how to produce food, right, completely automate that, right, via governments, so that people can then, I just want to make it such that AI can do all our jobs and we just be hanging out.
Yeah. I mean, that's
That's what I want. But the only way
yeah.
that happens is if it's a public effort, because
Yeah.
companies are just going to keep convincing you that you need Microsoft Copilot to make your Excel work better. Yet we can't, like, the bullets in Microsoft Word aren't the same size.
Yeah.
But Microsoft is trying to sell me Copilot. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that food thing, that I saw a LinkedIn post where they have drones that have some AI softwares that look at the ripeness of certain apples, and then it picks it for you depending on the ripeness of it. Now, of course, that can be skewed a bit depending on how they learn the
Mm,
models, but we're gonna get there. But I think still at the end of the day, like, you still need to review that and make sure that out of the 80,000 apples that your drones picked, how many of those are actually like
yeah.
legit? Are they ready?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just want, the thing is that the issue with that is that usually it ends up just being like, oh, a bunch of people that pick apples are going to lose work. But I want
Yeah.
the machines to pick the apples, and then people can get apples for free,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like, I want the food. I want the food to be grown,
yeah.
produced, and distributed by AI, and so people don't have to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, you get more into
All right.
philosophical
Yeah.
issues there. So
This we could have a whole other segment on this,
yeah.
but that, for me, that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping for AI. I'm hoping AI
Yeah.
can solve these problems, these like
Right.
root problems in our society
Yeah.
around food, around poverty, around disease,
Yeah.
right? Solve
Yeah.
that so people can just, walk if they want to,
Right.
but no, we're going to, like,
Abuse.
make
Yeah.
Gen AI videos so we can make
Yeah.
a fake 15-second video. Who
Yep.
is this useful for? Who needs this?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's just how I feel about it. But yeah,
Yeah. That's our society, man. All right, man. So we're gonna wrap up. Let's talk about the next 5 years for you. What does that look like for Shem?
yo, next 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, well, right now I'm doing my doctorate in health information exchange in Africa, and
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out the feasibility of the health systems on the continent talking to each other,
Okay.
which would be useful for things like pandemic preparedness and stuff like that. And it's an interesting space because the problem, even though it's daunting technologically speaking, but the
Mhm.
hard part about it will be the diplomacy, or would be
Yep.
the data sharing agreements, would
Yep.
be, all these different individuals from these different countries with different competing interests and
Yep.
different legal frameworks actually
Yeah.
coming together and saying, you know what, this makes sense and we should get on board with this. And so for me, I'm hoping that this dissertation that I'm doing leads me, sort of catapults me into that space,
Mhm.
into that space onto those tables where I'm able to rationalize investment in this, but also rally different stakeholders behind a common vision,
Yep.
and also participate in implementing and executing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that sort of would begin my career in my own frontline global health experience. Will continue. I do have some frontline global health experience, but so continue my global health experience in the sense that looking at just how to use information to make healthcare more accessible to more people in Africa.
Yeah.
And data is a huge part of that because we can't change what we can't measure.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, we definitely have to do a follow up podcast because very much interested in seeing like how policies are interlaced when of course, deal with different countries. GDPR.
Check on me in like in a year from now. I'll have all those answers.
Oh, perfect. So, when do you graduate?
Inshallah, 2026.
Okay,
2026, around May 2026, I should be graduating if all things
nice.
work well.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome, man. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to following up on this podcast, and I'll be in DC probably next month. So if you're still there, my mom lives there, so I'll come and visit, and maybe we'll hang
Next
out.
month,
You know.
next month I won't be here, man. I'm going
Oh,
to
you traveling?
Uganda.
Ah, okay, okay. No worries, no worries. Well, my
Yeah.
mom's there, so we'll probably catch up at some point in time, man. I'll be around.
Yeah, I'll be back in January. So if you're ever around, pull up on me.
For sure, man. Cool, cool. Well, thank you,
All right.
man. This has been a great podcast. We started out initial strangers, but it feels like we're pretty good friends now already.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
So, hoping forward to our next conversation, and definitely wishing you the best of luck through school. And then, of course, career wise, I know you're going to go out there, kill it. You're going to do great things in Uganda, and hopefully, some of the same technological innovations you apply there, we can bring cross border to Sierra Leone, which is the intent of this podcast, man.
Absolute more. Yeah, yeah. No, um, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you for having me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this opportunity.
for sure,
Yeah,
man.
and hopefully it'll all go well.
All right, fam. This has been another great episode with Shem Opolot, my Ugandan brother. I plan on visiting DC at some point in time. Grateful that you join our podcast. So stay tuned for more episodes. If you are looking to get in touch with Shem, you can either email me at africansandtechnology@gmail.com, or we'll have his social media handles at the bottom of this video as well. And you can get in touch with him if you have any questions about policy, utilizing tech with policies, or even just like healthcare in general and his experiences with school. So, again, thank you, Shem, for a fantastic episode. And, catch you later, fam. Peace.